Tonight, the bishop speaks. The Christian bishop, stabbed in his church, allegedly by a young Muslim, releases a video talking about the attack and telling the Prime Minister not to censor the video of him being stabbed.
I would be of great concern if people use the attack on me to serve their own political interests to control free speech.
But I'll also talk to a top expert on Islam about what the bishop's supporters knew and you don't when they attacked police after the attack, and why Anthony Albanese is going after the wrong target by attacking Twitter boss Elon Musk. This is an important discussion you will not hear on any other broadcaster. Lots more coming up, including, as always, my Whiskey of the Week, an absolute must-buy, and my Book of the Week, a novel that best describes why so much journalism is so dishonest. Plus Barnaby Joyce on Anzac Day. And speaking of, I will start with Anzac Day, what I saw today, and what I saw today that is so critical in bringing us together. And then, I'm sorry, I will have to show you what's now an imported war, basically, threatening to tear us apart. The good and the evil, both on show on this sacred day. But to the good. My first memory of Anzac Day as the eldest son of Dutch immigrants was following the pipe band in Darwin. I adored it. What was I, 7, 8, maybe 9? It was the first time I can remember feeling this was a tradition of a country I wanted to be part of. So today, you can imagine, I really did love seeing coverage of that parade in Darwin this morning and seeing how it still made so many people there of so many backgrounds come together to remember the sacrifice of servicemen and women who gave their lives for us all. And in doing so helped to create one people out of many tribes. In fact, around Australia today, I saw that.
It's a day of connection. And for those of us that are veterans, the opportunity to remain connected to one another, to friends, maybe to veterans who have not met one another before, but also that connection to community.
And this is grassroots stuff too. I mean, remember all those attempts by the intelligentsia over the years to kill it off? You know, as glorifying war as just Anzacery, fakery. But the people know what the people know. And today, even after the terrible COVID lockdowns, they're back in big numbers to keep this great and necessary day alive.
It's wonderful, especially against the young.
It's getting bigger and bigger. And the way that they're actually applauding us women, hey, it is unbelievable. Yeah. It's really good to see.
It's such a wonderful feeling of marching along and getting that.
Anzac Day is a day to represent our country, respect, you know, all the soldiers that fought for us in the past.
I went to a dawn service elsewhere, and the number of young people that were there, even without their parents, it was great.
Came down for the dawn service, and I like bringing the kids out so they can see the Anzacs because it's important to keep it going.
I heard a pop talking to his grandchild this morning, just telling her, and she was asking him questions, and I thought, well, there you go. That's when those really important conversations are happening on Anzac Day.
These are crowds who came together to join our past to our present and to our future. It was a uniting of generations as well as of peoples. It was about honouring also the heroic values we like to imagine are our own, and which days like this inspire us, at least I hope, to aim for them, even if some people, like the head of an organisation recording the memories of veterans, fear they may be dying these qualities with the last veterans of World War II.
They've grown up in an era that had these qualities of respect and honour and sacrifice and integrity. And, you know, if you look at the widespread community, all you have to do is, you know, watch a few news stories and you just think, where have those qualities gone? And I can tell you where they've gone, that they've stayed with our previous greatest generation. And there's a lot we can learn from that.
Well, I hope he's wrong, because let's hope this day will live on and inspire new generations to the service of us all. But to something else that needs saying on this day, a day when a Greens councillor in Sydney attended an Anzac Day ceremony with a Palestinian keffiyeh in protest, a day when Melbourne University students spent occupying part of their campus to accuse us all of complicity in Israel's supposed war crimes, a day when students there tried to recruit for their planned revolution to overthrow our state, a day when a group called Teachers for Palestine said, well, this day should not be glorified. It celebrates Anzacs who murdered Palestinians. and students from Palestine repeated those same claims.
The Anzac played a major role in the violence that established British Mandate Palestine.
And it was also a day when 5 youths were charged, by the way, for extremist offences, allegedly connected with the stabbing last week of that Christian bishop. Now, what we're seeing in so many ways now is a new challenge to this country's very existence, now seen here through these anti-Israel protests. 3 things are now clear about many of these protesters. The first, obviously, is that many are collectivists who will repeat any damn thing, no matter how stupid, as long as it makes them feel part of a tribe. As actor Susan Sarandon found when she went to inspire the protesters at America's Columbia University, at a protest that's now spread to our own universities.
To be attacked. With racism. And intolerance. Is not acceptable.
These protesters are so sheep-like. They repeat the chants of the Hamas terrorist group as well, to wipe out Israel from the river to the sea, without having a clue what death and destruction they're calling for, or what river they're actually talking about.
Do you know what this sentence means?
Assuming it's geographical, like from I don't know geography well.
And so we start, in a small way, to a frightening repeat, really, of a history that I bet none of us expect to see in our lifetimes. I mean, here are Nazis, real fascists, real Nazis, stopping Jews in 1938 from entering Vienna's university. And at Columbia University in America, students like those sheep I showed you, buying at Susan Sarandon, turned savage, buying as they pushed out Jewish students like this woman from the university grounds they'd taken over.
We are going to create a human chain. Where I am standing. So that they do not pass this point. Walk and take a step forward.
Yeah, I absolutely feel threatened.
So that we can start to push them out of the camp. One step forward. Another step forward.
That's at a top university. Now, point 2 is that, as you saw there, this is becoming, in effect, if not always intended, certainly in effect, anti-Jewish. Now, I don't care how many fake labels are slapped on this, like this is not anti-Jewish, it's anti-Zionist or anti-Israel. In effect, it's now anti-Jewish. And the third thing is this. This is not just anti-Israel, by the way. Many protests may not even mean it. But this is really, in effect, anti-the West and anti-Australia, because we now have our own buying students copying the Americans, chanting like people who can't think for themselves, occupying universities like Sydney and now Melbourne, and they too mindlessly repeat the slogans of Hamas terrorists, even on their tents, from the river to the sea, which means Israel must be wiped out. But not just Israel. In Australia, anti-Israel protesters are marching against Australia Day. They're marching against Australia. They are attacking the very existence of Australia, claiming it's a colonialist evil on stolen land, just like Israel they falsely claim. And have you wondered why it is these protesters are blocking major roads, like in Melbourne, blocking the CBD too, and blocking trams as if they hate Australians as well, because they're not trying to persuade Australians. No one's persuaded by this. They're punishing them. You see, Israel's real sin is that Jews are too white, they're too successful, they're too rich, they're capitalists, and in today's new identity politics, the Jews, they tick every box there of the oppressors who can be blamed for every failure of their enemies. And so Australians tick those boxes too, white Australians especially. But you don't have to take my word for it that some of these protesters, many even hate Australia. Some will just tell you. Here's one prominent anti-Israel activist, Sarah Saleh, who actually worked on Australia's Human Rights Commission. She was called out for hating us at a recent anti-Israel protest.
Mate, you are not wrong. we actually do hate Australia. We're literally saying it to you. We hate the settler colonial project of Australia and the way that it treats First Nations people, the way that it is built on stolen land.
So this Anzac Day, you have been told, haven't you? It's not just Jews who are in danger. But to someone who commemorated Anzac Day in, I think, 3 states at least, starting with Canberra, the opposition's spokesman for Veterans Affairs, Barnaby Joyce, the former Deputy Prime Minister and our regular Thursday guest. Barnaby, lovely to see you. You were in Canberra, then on the Gold Coast again for Australia Day, now in New South Wales. I mean, that's one effort. That's a serious effort. What's your impression from what you've seen? Because it seems to me both that Anzac Day this year seemed more needed, more salient than usual, but also more disrespected by some.
Yes, it's, you know, Anzac Day, in the past we thought it was about them, their, then. But now we realise it's actually about us here and now. And it's about the families. It's, in the past you would have seen photos overwhelmingly ex-servicemen, overwhelmingly. But now it's the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. So families of honour can say, my great-grandfather, my great-granduncle, my father, my mother, my son, my daughter, myself, have served this nation to protect this nation, to give people the rights and liberties that we enjoy, but we take for granted. And this is so important. It's seminal. It's seminal to what this nation is. If you like the egalitarian nature, if you like the democracy, if you like the rule of law, if you like the freedoms and liberties you have, well, you have to thank those who protected them, because without their protection, you wouldn't have any of that. You wouldn't have to worry about all these things you're arguing about, because you would be subjugated by another nation. You would have your foot on your throat. Your children would live in a completely different world. And so that is why it's so important. So we see the families going out there, and for them, it's become iconic. And for them, it's sacred. And it is growing, and so it should grow. It's developed from what it was. It is now something that is developed. It is better. It's what draws people out, and great today to celebrate with, or commemorate, not celebrate, commemorate with so many Australians.
Yeah, Barnaby, I think there's something else now that's become pushing to the fore here. I agree. It is about honouring those who, you know, endured so much and lost so much in the defence of us all. That's number one. I've got that. But what I think I'm seeing now is many Australians rallying to Anzac Day because it is something that brings us into communion with the past, the present and the future, brings us together, people of all walks of life, from every kind of tribe, if you want to put it that way, or ethnicity. This, the glue, is, I think, so important now to people.
Well, that's exactly what I said. It's now us and here and now. It's not them and there and then. It's us and here and now. And of course, it is. I think a lot of people say, I'm sick of being pushed around. I'm sick of people pushing me around on Australia Day, pushing me around on Christianity. And now we do have people coming in and say, oh, well, we don't like Anzac Day. It's one of the last bastions that these people hold. So we'll go in there and try and remove that from them as well. And we've already had so-called teachers and staff for Palestine saying that Anzac Day must be dismantled. Now, at the start, they go out and you think, oh, that's ridiculous. Who cares about them? Well, you better care about them. You better make a stand straight away. You better make a stand straight away, because these contrarian, parochial fleas, it grows. If you give them breath, they grow. So you've got to deal with it immediately. And it really says to all people, the greatest respect should be for those who offered their life for this nation, who lost their life for this nation, who were maimed both physically and mentally, whose families fell apart, whose marriages broke down because one member was away for so long and so far, for the people who came back and were just deserted by the nation, just forgotten about. And remember, we have 14,000 ex-service men, overwhelmingly men from the First World War, who have nothing but clay above them, no tombstone, no headstone. They're forgotten about. And we have a paramount duty to find these unmarked graves within Australia and give them the dignity of a tombstone.
Look, Barnaby, I'm going to play later in the show some of a message recorded by the Sydney Bishop who was stabbed last week. He says the Albanese government should be not be trying to ban Twitter from showing the video of his stabbing. Do you agree with him?
Well, I think that he has a good point. I think there's a fair differentiation between child molestation or anything like that, which is just an absolute grievance against the soul of what we all are. Nobody wants to see it. We find it all contemptible. Or a massacre, a wholesale massacre by an evil lunatic against people. But when issues go to policy and politics and philosophy, I think we've got to be a little bit careful about where we actually put this line of censorship. Are they going to censor Gaza? Are we no longer going to see anything that's happening there? Are we going to censor what we see in the Ukraine? Are we going to stop seeing things there? The issue here is that it is absolutely striking, but we have a person who is motivated by a peripheral philosophy that was violent. He wasn't motivated by his own cause. He was motivated by a philosophical cause, and he attempted to murder somebody. And
well, we don't know. Sorry, Barnaby, I've just got to jump in there. We don't know his the court will decide his motivation. The court will decide his intention. We don't know
allegedly.
That. But I mean, you're quite right. I think it's a document of history. Yeah. I think it's a historical a record of something that I think the bishop does not want wiped from the collective memory. And I think he is quite right in not wanting that part of history denied, effaced, obscured. And I think he's got an important point to make there. Barnaby Joyce, loved your comments on Anzac Day. Thank you so much indeed for your time. After the break, we will hear from Bishop Mamari Emmanuel after his stabbing, the reporting he made, plus the truth about why his followers rioted after he was attacked. What that crowd knew that you don't. Bishop Mamari Emmanuel has spoken. And just caution, I'm going to briefly show some footage some people might find confronting. The bishop has released a video explaining why the Albanese government must stop trying to get Twitter or X to ban the footage of him being stabbed in his church last week, allegedly by a 16-year-old Muslim in what police say was religiously motivated act of terrorism. 7 other teenagers, by the way, were arrested in connection with this attack yesterday, and the government says Twitter must ban the video in case it sows even more division. Well, no, says the bishop.
I'm not opposed to the videos remaining on social media. I would be of great concern if people use the attack on me to serve their own political interests to control free speech. The moment we oppress this very freedom of speech and religion, we are losing the very human identity and dignity as well.
The bishop also pointed out it was the duty of Christians not to take revenge for what happened and not to commit violence. The whole video is quite impressive. Now, I'm going to talk to a top expert on Islam because we need now to cut through the Albanese government's spin about what really happened when and after the bishop was attacked. We can't let the government twist this debate into an attack on Elon Musk, the head of X or Twitter, or blame social media, or let the head of ASIO yesterday even bracket Christians with Islamist terrorists because some supporters of the bishop rioted the night he was stabbed, attacking and injuring police for not handing over the youth who had been arrested. Joining me is Mark Dury, who's an Anglican pastor who holds doctorates in linguistics and Quranic theory, and has in fact written a superb history of the writing of the Quran. It's called The Quran and its Biblical Reflexes, superb book. He's also taught Islamic studies at the Melbourne School of Theology. Mark Dury, thank you so much for your time. I want to actually start with the riot by the bishop's supporters after he was stabbed, because I think that's helped police and politicians and journalists deflect attention away from the stabbing itself. Now, that riot was terrible. 51 police hurt, people now being arrested over that. How do you explain what happened?
Well, a lot of people were watching the service on live stream, so the Assyrian community would have been quickly aware of what had happened. It's important to understand the Assyrians are a highly traumatized community. More than 500,000 were killed in a genocidal attack during the First World War, and there have been repeated massacres and assaults upon them. The worst, most recent was, of course, due to ISIS. And so many of the members of the Assyrian community in Australia would have lost relatives and gone through, unspeakable traumatic experiences. And often in the Middle East, when Christians are attacked and the police show up, the police deny or suppress the incident and sometimes arrest Christians. So there would be a low sense of trust in the police, in the authorities, because a lot of their experience back in the Middle East was that the police are actually there to conceal or hide the event and not to actually deal with it properly. So there's that combination of trauma and also a lack of trust of the authorities, and also, of course, the desire to protect the bishop, to defend their leader.
Now, you told me before the show that riot is also partly explained by the fact that Assyrian Christians, many of them speak Arabic, coming from, the Middle East there, they hear things said that the rest of us don't. Can you explain what they might have heard that we don't?
Yes, I've spoken to Middle Eastern Christians in Sydney over the last 20 years, and they've often told me that they're very aware of incitement, anti-Christian incitement that is in at least some mosques, and it's just a constant backdrop for them. Just an example is in February, one of the leading imams of Australia gave a sermon in which he said that the Jews will be dealt with, but also all other religions. He said jihad is the only way to deal with non-Muslim religions, and he referred to Christians as well in that list. But more recently, circulating amongst Christian Arabic speakers in the Middle East, in Sydney, has been recordings of Australian Muslims who have praised this young man. One man said he was jealous of the teenager who attacked the bishop.
Allegedly
another said allegedly attacked, yeah, and another said that anyone who says anything about Muhammad should be slaughtered. So these are recordings in Arabic. I don't know how they obtained these, but they're circulating widely amongst Christian Arabic speakers in Sydney. So that sort of information, which is not really available in the news or in public to English speakers, is very available to Arabic speakers who are Christians in Sydney. And I think maybe about half of the Arabic speakers in Sydney are Christians. So it's a very sizable community, and they're very aware of anti-Christian incitement.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we had the ASIO chief yesterday bracket Christians with Islamic terrorism on the basis of this riot, which I thought was, I thought he was just pandering to the Muslim community in saying that. I thought it was grossly unfair. But I have to also say that I thought the violence towards police was un-Christian. How do we regard the Assyrian Christian community after having seen that?
Well, I think the leaders of the Assyrian community would deplore that. And the bishop himself has said that he'll always love the guy who allegedly attacked him. And I think it's a symptom of the trauma that many of them have been through. It would have triggered them and sent them back to memories of what they'd seen and experienced and what's happened to their family and friends back in Iraq. So I think this is a trauma-driven response. It's not, I think, a native or natural Christian response, but it's understandable in a sense that the police are there to keep them out from coming into the mosque. Completely understandable. Sorry, from coming into the church. It's completely understandable. But from their perspective, they want to witness the event. This is very important. The Assyrians it's very important to them that their history, the massacres, the genocides, should be witnessed, that they should be remembered, the names should be remembered, and people would want to be there to see it. So it's deplorable that they did use violence. So it's very regrettable, but it's understandable that they're very highly traumatized and they want to kind of protect their bishop and also witness the events that have happened.
And I think you made the point that the bishop actually repeated in this message I played a couple of excerpts from, that he did still love the youth who allegedly stabbed him. He prayed for him and said the Christian message was not to strike back. And I think that perhaps is the more truly Christian representation there. I want to shift to something that may, I admit, be probably related, something else that's just spreading now this week over the internet, but will not, like the messages you were talking about, will not be on the English-speaking news. It's something that this government won't mention, won't try to get banned for radicalising young Muslims. It's a member of the Shura Council of Qatar. Qatar supports the Hamas terrorist group that attacked Israel on October 7. He's just told a meeting of the Arab League, community of Arab nations, that more such massacres are needed to destroy the state of Israel, the state of the evil Jews. Here he is.
لن يكون هناك سلام ولا تفاوض مع الكيان الصهيوني، فقط يعترفون بشيء واحد وهو القتل، فهم قتلة الأنبياء. إن عملية طوفان الأقصى التي بدأت ما هي إلا مقدمة للقضاء على فساد الكيان الصهيوني الثاني في الأرض.
When he refers to the Al-Aqsa flood, he's referring to the October 7. That's the name they're giving to the October 7 massacre of 1,200 Jews, the rapes and the beheadings and all that. Mark, this hatred, where does it come from? And isn't this, rather than social media or Twitter or Elon Musk, isn't this incitement the real problem?
Yes, that speaker makes 3 references to Quranic verses and themes in that short speech. The idea that you can't make peace with the Jews is from the Quran. That is, the Jews are warmongering and they'll always seek to be at war. He also says they're the killers of prophets. Again, that's from the Quran. And he speaks of the corruption that the Zionist entity is spreading in the land. Now, spreading corruption in the land is a Quranic phrase, and the advice is to apply killing or to put to death someone who spreads corruption in the land. So these are references, sadly, to the Quran, and I believe that Islamic anti-Semitism is very much religiously driven. It's not racist. It's not racist. It's not racially based. It's religiously driven. It's religious incitement which draws on religious texts, and that is a very difficult concept for us here in Australia to get our minds around. But it is the truth.
So does that, for you, explain why the Prime Minister would rather start abusing Elon Musk as the problem and Twitter as the problem rather than deal with what you're just talking about?
I think what I'm talking about is much harder to deal with than Elon Musk or Twitter. So you focus on the easy thing to deal with. I'm sure that the Assyrian bishop won't want what happened to him to be erased from the historical record or from the internet. This is very important to Assyrians, that what's happened to them in the past, what's happening at present, be documented and be known by everyone. They don't want to be in a world where there's denial about what's happening to them, and so they will be opposing that. But yes, this is the problem of religious incitement is a very serious one. It's something that's been happening for a very long time in Australia, and we are not really. We've shown that we're not really able to deal with it, and in a way, part of us doesn't really want to have to deal with it. One of the police said that they're not focused on religion; they're focused on radicalisation. But the problem is that the radicalisation has a religious theme and element to it, and it's very hard to make that distinction in practice.
Exactly what they're trying so hard to deny, but I don't know how they can keep doing that and come to terms with what's really happening. Mark Durie, as always, thank you so much indeed for your insights.
Thank you, Andrew.
After the break, well, last night I praised our Muslim leaders in the wake of the stabbing, what they'd Are they moderate, etc.? But today it's a different story. Plus, how Jackie Lambie just shot herself in the foot. Temper. A friend of mine watching the start of the show said she actually did the march at Warrnambool, Catherine McGregor, the RSL march. Now, neither Catherine or I are into identity politics, but I think something needs to be said here. I hope Catherine doesn't mind, will forgive me. Catherine is transgender. I think it's bloody marvellous that Catherine led the Warrnambool march. Not because of identity politics, because she's a top sort, really nice person, terrific person. But it goes to my point. With that uniform on, whatever tribe you might be of, a gender, whatever, you are Australian, you are one of us. This is the magic of Anzac Day. All strength to Catherine, all strength to Warrnambool, all strength to Anzac Day. I yesterday praised leaders for their response to the stabbing of Christian Bishop Omari Emmanuel last week. Today, I'm afraid it's a different story. One of Australia's top Islamic groups, once again, it seems to me, played the victim card, stoked the persecution complex in the Muslim community that I think is dangerous. Police yesterday arrested 7 youths allegedly connected to the stabbing, have now charged 5 with terrorism-related offences. But today, our top 3 Muslim groups said they were left in the dark about the raids, and Bilal Ralph, spokesman for the Australian National Imams Council, complained police hadn't consulted them first and said such a high-handed police approach towards teenagers without involvement of community elders and organisations or social workers risks entrenching and promoting violence among disillusioned youth, alienating communities, creating distress and anxiety about the attempt to conflate what is occurring with religion rather than misguided ideology. Seriously, is that what police were doing, are they claiming? They wanted to be consulted when police thought the raids were actually urgent?
It was considered that the group, subject of our attention, posed an unacceptable risk and threat to the people of New South Wales, and our current purely investigative strategies could not adequately ensure public safety. As a result, we determined that we needed to escalate our activities and that overt action was required.
Joining me, Louise Elliott, business consultant, Hobart City Councillor, and James McPherson, the late debate here on Sky News at 10 o'clock tonight. James, should police really have consulted 3 Muslim groups first before raiding a group they claim could have committed a terrorist attack, and soon?
Of course not, Andrew. I mean, I'm shocked to learn that federal police or the terrorism squad or whichever section of the police it is are expected to consult the Muslim community before taking any action. I mean, that's absolutely ludicrous. As for this idea that by staging this raid, police are promoting violence, I would argue that it's these Islamic organisations that continually claim victimhood. They're the ones who start to convince young people that somehow they're being marginalised and that they're not part of this country. And then in terms of the nexus between religion and an ideology, I mean, it would be very easy for these Islamic groups to break that nexus if that's what they want. Denounce anti-Semitism, denounce the hate preachers that we've seen in Western Sydney, disavow those parts of the Quran and the Hadith that seem to promote violence, if that's what is happening. And if it transpires that someone like the bishop in Sydney was the victim of a terror attack, then take up a collection at all the mosques around Sydney and bless him with a generous gift to say, hey, we love you and this is not who we are. It would be very easy for them to break that nexus. It's not the job of the Australian police to do that.
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it, Louise? I mean, I've never heard Buddhist leaders say, we should be consulted before you arrest the Buddhist. Never heard Hindus say, you should consult a Hindu before you arrest a Hindu. I've never heard Christian groups saying, you should consult cardinals before you arrest a Catholic, say. This is really amazing. This is tribalism taken to, I think, a dangerous degree. Mm.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, consultation only occurs when there's it should only occur when there's a genuine chance of changing the decision. And here, I believe that the police, they obviously had robust intelligence and they knew what they were doing. They knew they had to act swiftly. This wasn't a case of some vandalism or shoplifting where some social workers could come in and take the kids outside or get them to join a basketball team. This is preparations for terrorist acts. This is really serious conduct.
Allegedly.
I mean, that's... Yes, allegedly. And the charges have been laid for that. So, I mean, I thank the police for monitoring the situation and being able to come together and take swift action as required. And I hope that now the community leaders will, of course, come behind and support, because these children obviously need, and they are only teenagers, need de-radicalisation urgently.
Well, I don't know about these particular teenagers, that's all to be seen, but honestly, once again, the police are now being cast as villains in this. I just think this is so irresponsible. And unfortunately, it's of a piece with a few too many people I've commented on the past and documented. The Prime Minister's response to this attack, James, has been to demand Twitter remove video showing. I like the way they all claim the problem is social media without realising it's like blaming the typewriter for what's typed on it, you know. The Bishop of Stad has released a video saying, no, show this footage. He doesn't want this having used as an excuse to limit our free speech. What do you make of that? I mean, should what the Bishop says actually make a difference in what the government thinks about the releasing of the video?
Yeah, well, first, Andrew, it's pretty offensive that the Prime Minister seems more upset about footage of the alleged attack than he is about the alleged attack itself. He's been far stronger about social media than he has been about the welfare of Bishop Emmanuel. That should be offensive to all Australians. Now, I agree with Bishop Emmanuel that the footage should be allowed to be shown, but to be honest and with great respect, Bishop Emmanuel's opinion on that is neither here nor there. This is a matter of public record. It occurred during a live stream from the church. Everybody saw it. It's now a news event. We can't go picking and choosing which current events we want people to see and which we don't want to see, because of course that will then be used to push certain narratives and to hide others, which I suspect is exactly what the Prime Minister is doing here. What's next? I mean, if you follow his logic, do we get rid of all footage of 9/11 because some people might get ideas? Correct. Do we delete footage of the Bali bombings because we don't want people to be upset or start to have opinions that are uncomfortable? It's a ridiculous suggestion by the Prime Minister, and to think that this is the intellect leading our country, I mean, God help us. Yes,
Absolutely correct. George Floyd, that vision,
classic example,
riots around the world. I mean, how come that wasn't blocked then?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Louise, about a fellow Tasmanian? I wonder whether Jackie Lambie scored an own goal, because she went all in on attacking Twitter boss Elon Musk, even calling for him to be jailed for not taking down this footage, and then said she was leaving Twitter in protest, and so should all other MPs. Here she is.
But I say this to everybody else, I'll be switching off X today. I'll be doing that before I get to the airport this afternoon, and I suggest that the other 227 members of Parliament do the same thing and show them that you mean business, because when you want to lead by example, it has to happen from here. It has to happen from here. So start switching off X. Start throwing it back at him. But we've got to start from here.
Now, Louise Lambie is indeed now off X or Twitter, but I can't find anyone in Parliament who's followed her, not even the Greens. I think this is going to cost her, isn't it?
Oh, goodness. I can tell you what, when Jackie Lambie was first elected, there was a lot of Tasmanians cringing. She came good for a while there, but we're back cringing again. I mean, honestly, the fact that I think her perspective seems way off on things. She's calling for Elon Musk to go to jail. She thinks that people will actually care that she's left Twitter. She actually thinks that people will follow her off Twitter. And she also has resorted to name calling, which is toddler behaviour, even though she is trying to treat us like toddlers through this censorship. So, oh gosh, all I can say is I am a little bit mortified seeing that come out of Senator Lambie, who is a senator from my home state that I love so much. It's not a good look at all.
James, I'm out of time, but just quickly, how long do you give before Jackie Lambie realises that being on Twitter is actually quite important to her job.
That's the problem she's got, isn't it, Andrew? She made this great pronouncement, and at some point she's going to have to backtrack it because Twitter is where you go to get news and views. It'll be interesting to see how long she lasts.
I'm going to say a month. James McPherson, Louise Elliott, thank you so much for you both. After the break, mad scenes in London, but also strange stuff from Buckingham Palace, a cover-up of bullying claims against Meghan Markle. And my tips of the week. Hypocrisy. London has seen massive protests against Israel. I mean, they've been so anti-Jewish, in fact, that police ordered one Jew to leave or they'd arrest him because the mob would go nuts.
You are quite openly Jewish. This is a pro-Palestinian march. You choose to remain here because you are causing
In contrast, this is how police treated a protest that was not anti-Israel, but pro-St George, the patron saint of England, who gave the British flag the cross of St George. Joining me from London is Patrick Christie's, star presenter on GB News. Patrick, contrast and compare the policing of these two protests with the St George people, patriots, being battered with sticks and whatever by police.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other point is this was actually more of a celebration than a protest. It does raise questions as to whether or not it is now illegal to be white, English and patriotic in England. There's definitely two-tier policing here. So the police, the allegation anyway, is that they were looking for a bit of a scrap on St. George's Day. They decided to kettle protesters in before the demonstration had even started. They charged horses at them, including people who were holding children. They were wearing the full riot gear. They had batons. They also, and this is an important thing as well, issued a Section 60 AA order, which is the removal of face coverings. No face masks were allowed at this particular event. However, when you have the pro-Palestine protests, everyone's got their face covered. Everyone's there waving a variety of different flags. We've had people waving the Al-Qaeda flag. We've had people waving the flag of the Taliban. We've had people waving the ISIS flag, all of the while with their faces covered. The police decided to storm into a pub full of people drinking on St. George's Day. Those people were singing things like "I'm England till I die." Let's contrast that with the fact that the police have had fireworks fired at them by the pro-Palestine mob. Like I said, you've had people waving the flag of Al-Qaeda, openly calling for jihad on the streets. But if you wave the St. George's flag and sing "I'm England till I die," then you get nicked. And I think there really is quite a big problem there, isn't there?
Well, explain that to me. Why would that be?
Well, I think the allegation is that the police are more afraid of essentially, if you've got a bald head and a bulldog tattoo on your arm and you might support a football club like Millwall, they don't really care about whether or not they rough you up a bit. But if they do get involved with the pro-Palestine protests, they could be called Islamophobic, and that is a massive problem for them. They can't possibly have that. And I think, is a major issue.
They could be racist, and that's the end of the story. That's the end of the career. Look, a curious thing, Patrick, Buckingham Palace is refusing to release a report into allegations that Meghan Markle, wife of Prince Harry, bullied royal staff back when the couple still lived on palace grounds. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is massive, okay? So there is a metaphorical bomb currently sitting in a safe in Buckingham Palace. Around 10 former staff of Meghan and Harry have apparently given evidence into this bullying investigation. One of them is Samantha Cohen. She's revealed who she was now, and that means that maybe the dam is about to burst on all of this. You also look at their turnover of staff, both when they were in the UK and when they're over there in Montecito as well. We would imagine all of those ones in Montecito were up to a watertight non-disclosure agreement. But many of these staff who have apparently given evidence about Meghan Markle's treatment of them here in Britain are women, okay? So this could destroy their brand and credibility on numerous different levels. Firstly, they're all about kindness. They're all about decency. They're all about morality. Well, that goes out the window if you're a bully, but they're also, especially Meghan, all about women's rights. Well, what if, allegedly, Meghan Markle has really actually been bullying a lot of women? Look, Meghan released a new jam didn't she? And the thought here is that she might be in a bit of a pickle over this, Andrew, if you'll excuse the pun.
Gee, I know they don't want to, add fuel to the fire of the relationship with Meghan Markle and Harry, but seriously, it must be so tempting to say, let the report get out and let the chips fall where they may. But anyway, discretion, etc., etc. Patrick, really bizarre scenes in London when 5 military horses, one very sad, was bloodied, clearly injured by running around as it did, went amok in the streets. What's the story here?
Yeah, well, I woke up yesterday and I thought it was the apocalypse, Andrew. I saw a bloodied white horse charging through the streets of London, another one alongside it. But yeah, around 7 household cavalry horses were on a routine exercise. Apparently they got spooked by some construction work taking place. They caused mayhem. They dispatched their riders. They were running into traffic, running into buses, running into people. Obviously, one of them, we understand the horse is fine now, but one of them did cut itself. It has, however, raised questions by the usual animal rights brigade, saying, look, are these horses just kind of ornaments for posh people that now shouldn't be anywhere near a city centre? Is it right for them to be ridden around the streets of London? The horses were rounded up, but not after one of them managed to actually run for a grand total of 6 miles. So, but yeah, everyone apparently is fine now. Everyone, including the horses, is apparently fine now. So that's good.
Well, the horses seem to enjoy the gallop in the streets, so there you go. Who doesn't enjoy a gallop in the streets? Patrick, Christie's, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Well, to take it from me, it's a treat on 2 levels. First, the best novel on journalism ever. Scoop. You read this and you probably understand my contempt for my own profession, which might come out a bit too often. In fact, my career trajectory, I read this years ago. Scoop by Evelyn Waugh. Often cited as one of the, among the top 100 books or fewer in the English language. Scoop, Evelyn Waugh. It's fantastic. It's about how a journalist who's just writing the countryside notes for an English paper with famous lines like feather-footed through the plashy fen, passes the questing vole. And the proprietor says, we needed someone to cover the war in Africa. And he gets the name wrong. So this guy gets sent because no one dares contradict the boss. He gets sent to follow a war that doesn't exist. This is journalism. The proprietor insists on having coverage of this war because the other papers have got it. And so he has to write about this war that isn't happening. This is journalism, trying to up the stakes, be the first to a story that may not actually be there, and not daring to say, now, actually, the truth is something else. You might understand how this book actually inspired me the other way. So, 1938 novel by Evelyn Waugh, as always, you can get it through our excellent friends at Robinson's Bookshop. Go to my tips on the left of the page as you see. And my tip of the week, now honestly, I normally rattle through these. Morris and Rutherglen, they make fortified wines. That's their famous thing. They made a whiskey, Tokay barrel. Look for the Tokay barrel. Only $145. Swear to God, this is one of the best and cheapest whiskies I know. Just the hint of that Tokay. It's also in red wine aged barrels. And it's like butterscotch at the end and so mild, no rasp at all. Fantastic. Morris Tokay, get it. That's it from me. Coming up next is Sharry Markson. Good night.